3 Taliban commanders have been released by the Afghan government as part of a prisoner swap. Sources have told Al Jazeera they've landed in Qatar. Senior Taliban leader Anas Haqqani is among them. In exchange, 2 professors from the US and Australia have been released after spending 3 years in Taliban custody. The pair have been handed over to the US military. Afghan President Ashraf Ghani announced the swap last week. Now, a new report published by the Pentagon says ISIL has strengthened its position in the region after exploiting recent developments in Syria. It says Turkey's offensive into northeastern Syria and the drawdown of US troops have allowed ISIL to rebuild its capabilities and resources. The report also says the death of ISIL leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi would do little to slow the armed group's resurgence. It warned the group could attempt to free detainees currently being held by US-allied Kurdish-dominated forces. Let's bring in Nader Hashemi, who's director of the Center for Middle East Studies at the University of Denver. He's via Skype. Thank you so much for being with us. I must say, this was somewhat expected, wasn't it? Did the Trump administration consider the risks associated with pulling out US troops and supporting the Turkish operation in northeastern Syria? What this report by the Pentagon has highlighted was widely expected, wasn't it?
It was completely predictable. Donald Trump's argument was that ISIS is defeated. The conflict in northeastern Syria doesn't concern the United States. It doesn't affect American national security interests. But one of the concerns right from the beginning, when Trump effectively pulled American troops out and greenlighted the Turkish incursion, was that the region would be further destabilized, and one of the beneficiaries would be ISIS, would reconstitute themselves. And so now we have another report that confirms that scenario.
So what was the motivation then? What motivated the Trump administration's decision to pull these US troops out and to support this Turkish offensive?
Well, you're asking me to explain the behavior of Donald Trump, and that's anyone's best guess. But if I had to, provide you with a reasonable answer, I think it largely has to do with domestic politics. I think we are in the beginning of an election cycle in the United States, and this narrative that Donald Trump has consistently stuck to, that the United States is involved in these forever wars, that other countries should take up the responsibility for fighting some of these wars. We're pulling our troops home. That was the stated argument. Of course, it doesn't make any sense, because Donald Trump really wasn't pulling troops out of northeastern Syria, because around the same time he inserted more troops to protect the Syrian oil fields. And if you look at the larger Middle East region, since May of this year, the United States has increased American troops, in the region. But with respect to his, base supporters who believe anything that he says, this is a line that's very popular, and I think that largely explains the president's decision.
Just coming back to the ISIL threat, the report also said that the death of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi would have little effect on ISIL's ability to reconstitute. So what are the options then now for preventing a new ISIL safe haven in Syria, if there are any?
Well, there's short-term challenges and long-term challenges. I think the short-term challenge is to try and stabilize this area. It was previously stabilized by an American troop presence in alliance with Kurdish forces. So now that arrangement has been changed, I think that's the immediate, pressing challenge, is to find some alternative security arrangement that prevents this area from further destabilizing, allowing ISIS to, insert itself and to reorganize. But of course, the longer term challenges still remain, and these have to do with, the social, economic, and political conditions that produced ISIS to begin with, that have to do with, authoritarian regimes, unemployed young people, the lack of hope, and also the ideological challenge that ISIS still poses as a movement that can still attract disgruntled young Muslim men from around the world. So I think those are the two immediate imperatives that I think need to be dealt with.
Thank you so much for your insight, Nader Hashemi from the University of Denver. Thank you so much for being with us today on Al Jazeera.
Thank you.